We don't want to take up any more time. We got to get this lady right here because she is going to bring that fire. She's going to bring those keys. Do we got Miss Arielle Loren? Can we pull her up on the screen? There she goes. Hey, she's ready to bring hey, if y'all don't have a notebook and pen out right now, you slipping and you tripping, because Arielle Loren is going to bring it to you guys. Look her up. Hey, without further ado, we don't want to take up any more time. Everybody shake your keys, drop the sevens in the chat for Miss Arielle Loren.
Thank you. Yes. I love it. I love the energy. So I'm definitely here. I'm ready.
Yes. We're going to leave it to you, sis, so you can take it away and teach us some stuff.
Fantastic.
All right.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and get my screen set up. How y'all doing? Yes, I see all them sevens. I love it. Okay, well, I'm gonna just go ahead. I'm gonna jump right in because I'm gonna introduce myself as I go through the presentation. But my name is Arielle Loren. I'm the founder of 100K Incubator, which is the first business funding app for women. I'm gonna talk a little bit about basically what it is that we do, but more importantly, like how can you actually get funding for your business, right? There's so many conversations right now that are about, supporting Black wealth. That's what we're here for. We're here to build our businesses. We're here to get our money right and all of these things. But a lot of that actually starts with actually having access to capital, right? And so for me, it's super important basically to make sure that you all understand that businesses are not built from zero. They're built from starting with some sort of capital base, and you have to know your options. So today's presentation is basically all about that: keys to Black wealth, how to get funding and scale your business. And so I said, I'm the founder of 100K Incubator, first business funding mobile app created for women in both Apple's and Google's app stores. I'm personally on a mission with my team to help 100,000 women get funding for their businesses and to scale to a minimum of $100,000 in annual sales. So we launched in November of 2018. We put 1,500 women through what we call our beta program, and we've gotten women access to over $3 million in total capital. And so really important as well, anytime you're taking advice from somebody, anytime someone is coming and about to teach you about wealth or funding or finance, et cetera, you want to make sure that that person has some receipts. So I share with you what we've done in the incubator, but I also want to share just a little bit about my background. I've been working with startups for over a decade, been working between, the marketing, business development, and funding industries. And specifically, I also went to school for this, right? And so I have a master's in management from Harvard, also have an international business management certification from Georgetown, went to NYU for undergrad. So for me, like studying the intersection of startups and culture and race and gender and all of these things and, in-depth finance and business strategy, that's what lights me up. That's what makes me excited. And so for me, kind of being here today is really, really special because I've made it a very specific mission of the app. Even though it was created for all women specifically, we got to talk about how Black women in particular are at the back of the pack when it comes to getting access to funding. And so regardless, I know obviously this is an event, obviously that's, for men and women. And so we love our brothers, et cetera. But, specifically, I think it's important that we have conversations about kind of what's going on, in the funding world, and conversations about like what is actually accessible to us and what is actually available to us. And so I want to kind of just get started with kind of breaking down like what is capital exactly, and how do you actually get access to it and how does it actually work? So going straight in, there are 3 different categories of funding, right? So we have grants, equity-based investments, and debt-based funding, right? So grants, I'm sure you all know, that's the free money that y'all are seeing kind of popping up on the internet. We see all these companies that are lining up to basically help Black business owners, get access to money that they don't have to pay back, right? And so we're in a very unprecedented time right now because between kind of COVID's impact on the economy, in addition to all of the, racial protests and uprisings that we're seeing across the country, all of a sudden there is this huge spotlight that is on, basically us as Black entrepreneurs. And so now is the time, definitely, if you are not already applying for as many grants as you can, regardless of whether you've started your business, or if you just still have an idea, now is the time to pay attention and see what you actually can qualify for. So that's the category of grants. Then there are equity-based investments. And so equity-based investments are basically people who come to you and are like, hey, in exchange for giving you money, we want a percentage of ownership, in your company, right? And so we've seen this happen through equity-based crowdfunding campaigns. I know that you all had a great session with Dawn Dickinson. We've seen her raise, we've also seen, quite a few folks as well, just do it kind of in the more traditional way of, talking to VC firms, talking to angel investors, et cetera. All of those are what we call equity-based investments. And so that for us, we consider that actually to be kind of expensive money, right? Because if we talk about debt-based funding, which is the third category, that's more so your business loans, your business lines of credit. You'll see, different, amounts, for interest. But even on the high side of debt-based funding, you're still going to pay far less for that compared to usually the returns that investors expect on equity-based investments. And so for us, it's important that you know all of your options and kind of know where you are as a founder, regardless of whether you're kind of in the beginning of starting your business, and you don't have any traction and you don't have any revenue, versus if you actually have a business, and you have gotten traction, you have started generating sales, what are your options actually for getting access to funding? And so I know there are a lot of people that when we talk about debt-based funding, a lot of people get really nervous, right? Because we've grown up in this situation where we feel like debt is like this bad thing, right? It's something that it's uncomfortable. It's like, you're supposed to pay your debt off, the less debt you have or zero debt you have, then the better off you are, right? But the truth of the matter is that when it comes to business debt, it's a completely different conversation, right? So yes, the ultimate goal is, to be able to be cash flow positive, to be able to, leverage, other people's money to make more money, from your business, right? But business debt is not consumer debt. So I think it's really important that we differentiate the two, because if you have a system and your marketing is really, really tight in your business, and that with a $5,000 business loan that you can turn that $5,000 into $10,000, why would you not take that $5,000? And so I think it's one of those things that, the more you get into your business, the more you learn about your marketing, the more you actually understand your systems and how you're making money in your business, the easier and more comfortable it will become for you to actually use capital, regardless of whether it comes in the form of a business loan or an investment or a grant, to actually be able to continue to scale your business. And so we talk a lot about capital, how it works, how to scale it, how to get to your first $100,000 in sales inside a 100K incubator, because for us, like that first 100K is really where you start to learn the mechanics of your business. And that's when a lot of opportunities start to open up to you to be able to access capital and continue to scale. And so let's talk about some different prerequisites for funding, right? Because oftentimes we come to the table, we have great ideas. We know that we definitely want, to start a business. We would like to get some funding. We'd like to get grants. We'd like to get, a business loan. We might want to get an investor, et cetera. But I think it's really important to talk about the things that are actually required, right? Because this is a business after all. And so if you don't kind of have these things, specifically in place, you're going to run into some problems to be able to access the capital that you're looking to have to be able to actually start and or scale your business. And so one of the first things we talk about is having a funding budget. And so for us, when we think about capital, one of the mistakes that we see a lot of entrepreneurs making, is that they're not really clear about how they're going to allocate the funds that they're asking for. And so either they're over-indexing and they're spending on things like, consultants, websites, et cetera. And they're not putting enough of their funding budget focus on the things that are actually more so going to scale them. So that's like advertising and things that are going to generate direct revenue generating activities. And so we say 50 to 70% of any money that you receive should be going into advertising and actually reaching your customers, expanding your customer base. Because if you put the money there, that's where you're really going to see the growth in the business. Now, that does not mean that you don't need to invest in consultants and coaches and websites and all of those things and great branding. Yes, we say put anywhere from 30 to 50% of the money that you receive over there. But it's important to have the balance, because oftentimes we'll get started as entrepreneurs, will have these dope decked out websites and they're amazing, you know, or we hire the coach, etc. But then we don't have any money left over to actually invest in what it's going to take to scale our audience. If anyone has been on social media over the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years, you've seen how things have definitely transformed in terms of algorithms, right? And so what I used to be able to get back and say in, 2008, when I first started working on the internet by just posting organically on social media, it's completely different now being in 2020, where it's like, hey, like if I post now, only a fraction of my audience is going to actually see what I post. And so understanding kind of the advertising game and having capital to actually put behind those ads, that is literally how you start to expand your audience base. Otherwise, you just have a really great website and a really great idea, but you're not actually reaching the people who are going to be able to make your idea go from just being an idea to actually being a business, right? So 50 to 70% needs to go into advertising or direct revenue generating activities. And the other 30 to 50% needs to go into infrastructure. You can build your sales funnels out, your websites, consultants, photos and video shoots, etc. Now, let's talk about personal credit because one of the things that I've also seen out there is that there are a lot of fake business funding experts out there that will tell you that your personal credit can be jacked up. And then basically like by some mysterious like trade line that you open, all of a sudden you're actually going to be able to get access to some big bank loan off of opening this trade line, right? I'm here to tell you I've been in this industry for a long time. It doesn't happen that way. It doesn't work. And so basically you have to at least have what we call average credit, right? So that's kind of around that 620, area. Again, your credit doesn't have to be perfect. We all make mistakes. I have jacked my credit up several times. Like it is not a situation where you have to feel like ashamed or like you're never going to be able to get access to business capital, et cetera, because you might have made some missteps, with your personal credit in the past, right? It's all about getting back to average. If you can get back to average, that's what, most kind of business financing companies actually want to be able to see, that, you've gotten rid of those collections accounts, you've gotten rid of, anything that might be outstanding on your credit report, you've gotten your debt utilization to a certain point, maybe at least under kind of 70%, so these are just like little things you want to keep in mind. And we talk about it in depth, actually in the first module of the bootcamp inside of the incubator, because you have to understand that having average personal credit is really just the minimum requirement to be able to access a lot of the funding that's going to be at your feet. And so take the time to actually get that credit repair done. Make sure you're working with reputable companies that actually get it done, versus, we've seen plenty of companies out there that are not doing what you're paying them to do. So you want to definitely make sure that you get your credit to a point that it's at least average, because it's going to open up a lot of business funding opportunities to you that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. The third point that I definitely want to talk about is making sure that your business is actually registered as a business, right? And so a lot of folks out here, doing business off of their, their personal social security numbers, and all of that stuff. Like you can't be doing business out of your personal bank account. So you're paying your groceries and your business expenses and everything out of one business, out of one personal account. Like, no, we can't do that. So to start that process of separating personal finance from business finance, we definitely need to make sure that your business is registered. So you need to get that LLC set up, that S Corp set up, that C Corp set up, because that's going to actually establish that your business is an entity in and of itself, with your state government, right? In addition to that, you want to also just keep in mind, you could go and usually register this on your own through your state government's website. I know there are a lot of companies as well that will say like, for $400, $500, $600, they'll go out and, register your business. If you want to do that, you can, but you don't have to. Literally, you could just go to your state government's website, follow the application process, especially for LLCs. It's super easy and straightforward. You do not have to pay, even more money on top of the state registration fees to actually be able to register your business. So make sure your business is registered. This is super important. The fourth bullet point that I want to talk about that goes kind of hand in hand with that, after you register your business entity with the state, you want to make sure that you also have your EIN registered with the IRS. EINs are free, 100% free. You go to irs.gov, You fill out the application process, and usually they give it to you like right there, on the spot. So that's just something you want to go ahead and take care of if you haven't already, and make sure that you have that EIN, because it's going to be important when it comes to applying for financing, under your business's name. In addition to, when you file your taxes as well, at the end of the year, all of these things, kind of play into the U.S. financial system and how we kind of track, businesses, and making sure that, again, business finance remains separate from personal finance. And then, of course, there's making sure that your business bank account is, actually open. So you got your LLC, you got your EIN. Now you want to go to your bank and you want to open up a business bank account, and you want to pay all of your business expenses out of that business bank account. And you want to make sure you're depositing all of the money that you're making, into that account. It doesn't mean that you can't have other accounts. Some people will set up like a business savings account, to be able to put money aside to pay their taxes or things of that nature. All of that is fine, but you want to have one main account that all of your money, all your payment processors are dumping money into. Why is this important? Because you have to have one central location where you're actually tracking where your revenue is coming into, right? If you are going to go after, sometimes, certain business loans or business lines of credit, et cetera, they're going to ask you for your bank statements. And so if you have, some payment processors dumping into this account, other payment processors dumping into other accounts, it's going to create confusion, and it's not going to be able to show the company that you have a consistent amount of revenue coming in every single month. They don't want to look at multiple, different bank accounts. They want to look at one bank account. So make sure that all of your payment processors, your Cash Apps, your Squares, et cetera, your PayPals, your Stripes are all depositing into this one business bank account, and that you are only paying business bills out of this business bank account, as well. So those are just some things for you to keep in mind. And then that brings me to making sure your taxes and your annual reports, with the state, sometimes even the city and the county are actually filed, right? All of that little paperwork stuff, nobody likes to, talk about that stuff because it's not fun and it's super annoying. But when it comes to actually being an entrepreneur, you also oftentimes have to be a CEO as well. And so that means paying attention to the things that actually matter. Paperwork matters. Filing your taxes, it matters, so you have to make sure that you're getting that done, every single year. It doesn't matter, like, even if you're at the point where you're like, hey, I got this huge tax bill, I can't afford to pay all of it right now, that's okay, still file and get on a payment plan. It's important that you file. So that's going to be essential when you're starting to apply for business financing, because they're going to ask you oftentimes to see your past tax returns. So making sure that that's taken care of, in addition to making sure that your annual report is also, filed with your state government, so that your LLC, your S Corp, your C Corps, et cetera, stay up to date. Like, these are all things that you want to make sure you keep in mind, and that you stay on top of any other paperwork that might be required for your specific business entity, or, whatever your state might require in terms of fees, every single year. There are also local and county kind of business tax receipts that are often required. You want to pay attention to that as well, because oftentimes there are government contracts and even grant opportunities that are available to you as a local business owner. But if you haven't filed that business tax receipt and paid that fee, you can't get access to that free money. And so you won't be able to get that grant, right? Or you won't be able to get that government contract that can completely change the revenue that is brought into your business. And so again, pay attention to the paperwork, make sure all these different kind of prerequisites for funding are in place. That's what's going to open you up to making sure that you get as much opportunity as possible to get financed. All right. So then that brings us to what we call the 3 levels of funding, right? And so you want to make sure that you understand where your business stands so that you can have the highest approval rates possible. Now, we break funding down into 3 levels for a specific reason. When we work with early stage women entrepreneurs, oftentimes we find that they're overwhelmed by all the funding opportunities that are available to them once they actually learn about them, right? And so the first question becomes like, okay, there are all these different funding opportunities that are in front of me, but what should I actually be applying for right now based on the level that I'm at in my business? So breaking it down, level 1, right? That's what we call kind of like anywhere from zero, which we call, pre-revenue, all the way up to $3,000 per month in annual, $3,000 per month in sales, right? Now, why, do we call this, kind of level one, et cetera? At this stage, you aren't really a business kind of just yet. Like you're still like establishing proof of concept. You're really in that early stage, et cetera. So there aren't going to be a lot of institutions that are just going to give you access to strictly business financing, that wouldn't be dependent, on you signing some sort of like personal guarantee. Now, that's just because you don't really have the business revenue to back it up. So we like to think about, kind of how do you get this first pot of money to be able to start to invest in the business and kind of start to establish more proof of concept, continue to scale past $3,000 per month, in sales, and then be able to tap into what we call level 2 funding. So level 1 funding is like a business credit card. So business credit cards are usually pretty easy to get, approved for, because they tend to be more reliant actually on the personal credit score of the business owner. And so you can usually start to establish business credit and get access to, at least a little bit of money kind of starting out just through that. Another thing is a personal loan, right? And so personal loans can be with collateral or without collateral. And so collateral is basically there's some sort of thing like a car, that basically, secures or anchors the personal loan. Oftentimes you'll see with, collateral-based loans, the interest rates are usually lower when it comes to being able to get access to that funding versus if it's an unsecured, no collateral personal loan, the interest rates will tend to be a little bit higher, but then there's nothing that's, securing it, or there's nothing that's linked to it in case you, for some reason, default. For us, personal loans are a great option. When you're first getting started, you might need that $10,000, that $15,000 just to inject, into the business. And so we say, go after that personal loan, use that money again strategically, like we talked about, with that 50 to 70% going into advertising and direct revenue generating activities. And then that other kind of 30 to 50% going into all the other pieces, the sales funnels, the websites, the consultants, et cetera, that you have to hire to be able to get to the point where you're ready to advertise, right? So we think about personal loans like that. Another example that we've seen entrepreneurs tap into successfully is home equity loans or lines of credit. And so if you own a piece of property, that's usually another great option that you can get some really, really low interest rates and access to a pretty large amount of capital. And that's because obviously your house is kind of securing the loan, right? And so again, thinking about how we split that up when it comes to the funding budget and using that capital appropriately, that's where you're really going to be able to see, a significant injection of capital to help you kind of start to scale past that $3,000 per month note. And then we have crowdfunding, right? And so crowdfunding can be reward-based, where you're basically just giving prizes or pre-order options, in exchange for people pledging into your campaign. And then obviously you have, equity-based, crowdfunding as well. We find with crowdfunding that if you don't have an audience, or you don't have, dollars kind of your own to be able to invest in advertising, it can become a bit difficult. And so usually we see a lot more founders at level 1 tapping into personal loans, home equity lines of credit, and business credit cards to kind of get that first injection of cash and capital to be able to continue to scale. And then that brings us to level 2, right? And so level 2 is when you really are kind of starting to become a business. You got that $3,000 per month kind of steady, you're starting to scale, it's kind of exciting. And so that's when we see a lot more opportunities open up to you. One of the first things we talk about is pitch competitions. Obviously people are like, well, wait, can I do a pitch competition and just have an idea and not, have $3,000 per month in revenue? Yes, obviously you can, but you have to think about it from this perspective as well. When you have 2 entrepreneurs or 5 entrepreneurs, et cetera, on stage competing for the same amount of, free money, and somebody actually has traction and proof in that $3,000 plus per month that their idea works, compared to the person who just has a really great idea, who you think is going to get the bag? So it's just one of those things that we're like, hey, you can definitely do it beforehand, but we definitely say once you've started, you have traction, you have monthly revenue, et cetera, like that's when we say definitely go hard on pitch competitions as well, because you can access more free money and you're more likely to win. Also, when it comes to business grants and government contracts, we talked a little bit about business grants earlier when I was speaking, especially with everything that's happening right now. again, you're seeing a lot of grants out there that are requiring like some sort of revenue, basically, to be able to get access to that money. And so again, having that $3,000 per month, having that proof of concept, having that traction, those are the things that you want to definitely keep in mind, when you're going after grants, because once you get to that level 2, like the world kind of really opens up to you. So you definitely want to do that. And then same thing with government contracts. Usually they want to see businesses that have track record, regardless of whether you're working with the city, the county, the state, or the feds. They usually want to see a business that has some history. And so again, being at that level 2, that $3,000 per month minimum, that's usually going to put you in a better position to be able to win those contracts and get access to that money. And then that brings us to government small business loans. So I'm sure a lot of you have, seen posts or either applied or, been trying to navigate the PPP applications, the EIDL applications, and several other kind of bridge loans, et cetera, that have been offered by different states. Government small business loans are great because basically they're backed by, the government. So the SBA is a great example of that. If you all haven't heard of CDFIs, as well, again, the US Treasury usually backs those. So it basically allows for the interest rates that tend to be lower than like the private market for you to be able to access, funds that are usually designated more so for community-based businesses, small businesses, et cetera. Now, we are in a time that's, like I said, very unprecedented. It's not typical. Usually SBA loans, they're trying to see like a 680 credit score, preferably more so in the 700s. But with COVID and everything that's happened, you've seen them kind of start to relax some of those guidelines. So if you have applied for the EIDL or you've applied for the PPP, you'll see that they're not usually using credit, so long as it's somewhere average, usually in the 600s, even if it's towards the lower side, they're actually doing more approvals. And so that's been very positive news, especially for a lot of, Black, business owners who are basically trying to, get access to capital to obviously survive what has happened, to the economy during this time, but also be able to, scale and continue to grow. And then we have payment processor loans, right? And so that's when your payment processors like PayPal, Stripe, Square, et cetera, they have their own internal capital programs. So if you've ever, run your business and gotten to a certain point, like I said, like that $3,000 per month plus, in sales, you'll usually sometimes see an invitation from their private capital program saying that, hey, we will give you what we call a merchant cash advance. We'll advance you some money, and basically take a percentage of your sales until that money is paid back plus our fee. And so a lot of business owners actually really like that because there isn't a monthly payment option or a monthly payment requirement that they have to worry about. So there's no extra bill. It's like as the money comes in, they get paid. So you really don't even, get to feel it, right? And so we love payment processor loans. We've seen some pretty competitive rates. It's easier on businesses in terms of cash flow. And so that's another great option to consider once you start having some traction and you're pushing enough sales volume through your payment processors to be able to access their private capital programs. In addition to that, we have private business loans. And so private business loans are usually with either private financing companies that might be, smaller or even, big banks. Everybody has, kind of different requirements, and then same thing for those business lines of credit. It's really just about kind of looking at what, the interest rates are, the payment terms are, et cetera. We like to see, reasonable either monthly payments, maybe weekly payments. We're not really here for any daily payments. We think that's excessive and over the top. And so these are all things that you want to definitely make sure that you're looking at, when it comes to taking out, private business loans, private kind of merchant cash advances, et cetera. Like make sure the terms are actually going to work for your business's cash flow, based on the sales volume and the expenses that you have coming in. And then that brings us to level 3, which is when you're making $9,000 per month in sales, you're on track to make $100K in the year. That's really the time that we actually recommend starting to talk to investors if you've exhausted all of your other options and you really need that investor capital. Now, obviously, when it comes to certain industries, like if you're in like tech or, something along those lines, oftentimes you might need a large amount of startup capital to be able to get started. And so you might not be able to do just level 1, funding to be able to get off the ground. So I understand that those situations oftentimes are special. But for most businesses, for most product-based businesses, service-based businesses, et cetera, if you can wait, before you start talking to investors, it is better to wait, because investor money, they're expecting, 3x, 10x, 20x, et cetera, depending on who you're talking to, whether they're an angel investor or a VC. Like, they want to see, substantial returns, right? And then we haven't even talked about as well, depending on how you set your contract up, what type of say they have, over the way that the business is run in exchange for that money. And so, we always say, like, wait until you establish some traction, wait until you get to that $9,000 per month. You're on track to make 100K before you start talking to investors, because it's going to put you in a space to have more negotiating power when you come to the table. When you come to the table and you just have an idea, and you are in a position where you really need the money, it's very different when you come to the table when you're like, actually, I've already started to establish this business. We've made 100 grand, last year, et cetera. This is what we're looking at in terms of growth. Here are our numbers, here are our analytics, here are our conversion rates, our customer acquisition costs, et cetera. When you got your numbers and your data, like, that is when you're really going to be able to negotiate the best deal. So we always say, if you can, wait, because it's going to end up paying off at the end. And so I want to answer some questions. I feel like I've thrown a lot at y'all. So I'm in the chat right now. If anybody has any questions, feel free to drop it. This is obviously the 100K Incubator app. All of my amazing women, you are more than welcome to join us. And to my brothers, I'm happy to definitely, point you in the direction of more resources. I'll also drop my Instagram as well in the chat so that you all have it. But we are definitely a platform that is totally here, for, supporting women entrepreneurs through their scaling process. But more importantly, me as an individual, I'm here to make sure that all Black entrepreneurs, regardless of gender, are educated about the funding world and all of the options that are available to us. We went through 12 different types of funding today, so a lot of folks, when it comes to talking about financing, it's super sexy and TV friendly to talk about the investing world, but nobody is usually talking about all these other funding options that are available to us and how we actually get access to them. And so I want to make sure that, we all know our options. You can definitely get in, and learn more, if you are a woman entrepreneur and you want to actually get access, not only just to the education of understanding the funding world more in depth, but also places you can apply to get funding, resources, mentorship, coaching, all of those things. We're definitely here for it. And like I said, anybody who needs help, regardless of gender, you can definitely hit me up on Instagram. I'm totally here to help. Questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Let me see, let me scroll. Okay. Let's see. Got it. Okay. So Raven, she said, where do you start first? As for example, making sure your personal credit is in place. So actually, the way that we set our curriculum up inside of the boot camp, inside of the incubator, module 1 is literally dedicated to all those prerequisites that I went over. And so one of the big things is actually, yes, like getting your personal credit together. And so we talk about different ways that you can hack your debt utilization to get it down. We talk about, how you can even generate some extra money to be able to do some of that work. We talk about if you've dealt with, bankruptcies and, other, collections and late payments, how do you get that stuff, off your credit? And then we also have a private credit concierge as well, where we have a consultant who does that work for you if it isn't something that you personally want to take on. So yes, definitely personal credit is super important in that first step. And you want to make sure that when it comes to getting access to business funding, that you're always trying to get your personal credit at least average. Okay, Kanasha asks, should you purchase a business address first before registering your business with the state? And does it help with obtaining business funding? When it comes to registering your business, with the state, usually, I mean, we see a lot of people who just more so have like home-based businesses kind of, just starting out. So they use their home addresses. If you want to purchase a business address, you can. That's completely up to you. But obviously you just want to, kind of be mindful as well when you're looking at, where you register. A lot of folks will just register in their home states, but if you know that your state in particular has, super high taxes, or, just other things, it might be worth kind of talking to a CPA or somebody who's kind of in the tax space in terms of where you should register your business. Florida is a great place to register your business. Texas is a great place to register your business. Delaware is a great place. Nevada. So you definitely have options, but it would involve kind of going through different entities to be able to set up, in other states that are not your own. Okay, what about e-commerce stores? Do all businesses have to be registered? So for the e-commerce store, specifically, let me know when it comes to specifically, what are you asking about e-commerce stores? Do all businesses have to be registered? I read otherwise. You can be a sole proprietor, but you're going to lose out on a lot of funding opportunities. So a sole proprietor is basically like, I do business under my name, as a consultant, my social security number, et cetera. The problem with that is when you go in to get financing, a lot of financial institutions feel like there's not enough separation between your personal finances and your business finances. And so having that entity in place, having that LLC or that corporation in place, eliminates a lot of that. And so we always recommend that you set up an entity versus just operating as a sole proprietor. Even for the LLC, when you are a single owner LLC, it does still operate as a pass-through entity when it comes to your taxes at the end of the year, but it's still a separate, entity that can have its own, business bank account, and that really looks separate to a lot of financing companies. And then Michelle asked, can you use a virtual, address? I mean, the preference is that you use a physical, address, whether it be, your home, or whether it be, another address that you purchase that has a physical location. So not like a PO box or, something like that. And yeah, so you can reach me on Instagram here. I'll put my Instagram in there as well. All right, what else? Any other questions? Just going through the chat, saying, did I miss anything? Let's see. And so I see there was a comment about being able to sidestep credit if you are operating outside of the US. Clients manufacture in Africa, and their African subsidiary trades on reputation as an American company. So specifically, this was actually a good comment. So specifically, the way that we work inside of 100K Incubator and the consulting that I do is based off the US financial system. And so for us, it's really kind of more of a national, thing. But, however other countries, do business and get access to credit, et cetera, that's a completely separate thing that we don't deal into. Let's see, what else? Awesome. So, okay, so Stacy asked, can you explain the process of hiring your children and the tax breakdown on how to do it economically? Okay, so Stacy, this is a great question, and one that I would actually recommend that you refer to a CPA. I'm not a CPA, so really it depends on the type of structure that you end up setting up, right? There are different laws, in terms of the way that you can pay your children, et cetera, based on if you're a corporation, versus an S corp versus an LLC. And so I would recommend that you actually talk to a tax professional so that they can kind of break down the different entity options and how you can actually do that legally and be good. But I believe it's like up to $14,000 or $12,000 or something along those lines that you can actually pay out. So Philip asked about, what about expenses? What can you write off? So it really kind of depends, again, when it comes to, expenses. But I mean, most like, paying consultants, paying employees, paying for your website. I mean, pretty much anything that you're paying for, in the business, you can write off. Now, it gets a little fishy, when it comes to, depending on like if you have like a company car, are you strictly using that company car just for the company? Do you have a separate personal vehicle? So like that can be, kind of interesting that you want to talk to a tax professional about. Another thing that you might want to, maybe also think about when it comes to writing off expenses is also entertainment. So there are laws around like if you go on vacation, like that vacation actually has to be just for business, before, you can kind of write that off. So again, make sure you talk to a tax professional, about that. We primarily deal more so in, again, like the funding, space and the actual scaling process. But when it comes to your taxes, you want to have like a reputable CPA, somebody who, really knows like accounting and tax law to be able to help you, when it comes to differentiating like, okay, what can I actually write off? How much of it can I write off, et cetera, and make sure that I don't trigger an audit or do something illegal. Can you change the state that you are registered in after you have registered in another state? I believe that you actually end up having to set up another business entity, but don't necessarily quote me on that. So you might want to just kind of look up specifically kind of what the state's laws are, because they're all different, right? So some states might allow you to do a transfer, others might require you to set up an entirely new business entity. So I think it more so depends on the states. Everybody's asking for the CPAs. Yes. Hopefully there'll be some CPAs before the end of the conference. It'll do a presentation. If not, then hopefully for the second one, that would be awesome. And so Oriana asks, so does my company help people access capital even for someone who's never had, a business? So you can be a first-time entrepreneur. Definitely. But you obviously have to come in, with the business idea, like what are you actually going to be doing? Be ready to, again, register and, do all of those things. So we don't, we're not the place to come to if you don't even have an idea. You just know you want to be an entrepreneur. Like you need to already have an idea and kind of know what direction you're heading in. We can definitely help you fine tune that idea. And part of our curriculum as well kind of teaches you that process of understanding your target market, knowing how to reach them, tapping into their pain points, how do you write copy, how do you actually, get your site up, and, all of these things that are actually part of the process of scaling. And so we can help you fine tune your idea, market to your audience, figure out who your audience is, et cetera, but you have to have an idea. Okay, awesome. Anybody else? Scrolling through the chat, let's see. Awesome. Well, I hope that this was helpful.
Arielle, hey, I was dropping keys on you the whole time. I just kept on writing notes after notes after notes. So anybody else? We got 5 more minutes for you guys. Got her for 5 more minutes, Is it? See a lot of people asking about the app, your app.
Oh, okay. So I see. Is there someone? Oh, okay. Is there anyone that directly helps you with your business? Yes. So we have live office hours in the app. So it's not just an app with a bunch of videos. Like we don't get down like that. We believe in hands-on supporting business owners. And so the reason why we make you go through the boot camp though when you first get in the app is just so that we can have an educated conversation about this process of getting you funding and scaling your business, so you can understand all of the different steps, and then the live office hours, and then the live feedback that, you know, my team and I will give you if you post or you message us, you know, et cetera. In addition to, you know, the lines that we open up for you to be able to call in, like it's important that we all kind of be operating from the same framework and understanding how we get businesses access to capital and how we help them scale to their first 100K. So that's how it works. We also connect you to different financial institutions and funding companies that can actually help you get approved. So it's a full circle program. You know, it's not just videos for sure.
Somebody asked, do we pay monthly memberships? This may have already been answered.
So it depends on what you select. So there's a 3-day free trial. So you can go in, you can look around, you can start the boot camp, you can see how we roll, like all of those things. You basically get to decide when you sign up, do you want to pay monthly or, you know, do you want to just pay once a year? So that's entirely up to you.
Y'all got it for 3 more minutes. Y'all better. I'm gonna start asking my own questions, getting this free game. You getting this free game right now. It was a lot of questions about the replay because a lot of people they couldn't take all these notes this far. If you already purchased the $77 for the general and the replay, you have that. If you only purchased the the general ticket for $30 and you want to upgrade, you can go to keysofblackwealthsummit.com and just pay $50 and it just upgrades you and you'll get the replay as well. So if you already purchased the replay, you're good. But if you only purchased the general and you obviously wanted to take more notes with Arielle, then you can go back and purchase the $50. Somebody asked, what is your favorite book?
Ooh, that's hard. You know what? To be honest, I get a lot more out of just like watching interviews and podcasts and, you know, et cetera. Like, sure, like, you know, I've definitely read, you know, a ton of books, you know, but it's these days, like, actually, that's not where I consume my information from anymore. It's really, I'm podcast heavy. I'm just, and it's not even like specific shows that like I subscribe to. Like I pay attention and I dig. If I'm on social, I see somebody post a clip, I like what they said, I'll go and I'll research it on YouTube and like listen to everything. And so there are a lot of really dope voices, you know, out right now. And also just like listening to people who are much further ahead, you know, than you, right? One of the things that I've been really getting into is just understanding the fund world, like above even like venture capital fund. Like I want to have a deeper understanding of private equity money, right? And so I was watching an interview on YouTube with like Robert Smith and a bunch of, you know, other predominantly, you know, older white male, investors. And to me, that was important, right? Because those are the conversations that oftentimes we might, sideswipe or overlook and not think that this is relevant to us. Just because, they might be talking about, billions and billions and trillions of dollars in assets that they manage. It's still important to listen, even if you only understand a few things from that conversation, it'll start to get your brain, kind of just rolling about how like this financial system actually works in this country. And so for me, it just really kind of depends. And if I watch that interview, usually there are a bunch of interviews underneath it. And so I just go down the rabbit hole. So those are all the things that, I actually do.
So the last question comes from me. So what's your long term? What's your ultimate goal? Like you leave this earth. What do you say I wanted to have accomplished? What do I want to have gotten done? What do I wanted to?
For me, it's helping 100,000 women get funded and scale their businesses to 100K. Like that's the goal. That's what I want to do. And so I've been really blessed and fortunate to have people join me on that journey who have offered to support in that journey and to work with some really amazing, dynamic women entrepreneurs. I'm someone, I believe in receipts. So anytime, we do a launch, or even if you go and you look on our site, as well at 100kincubator.com, you will see the stories of women that we have gotten access to capital and how we've helped them increase their sales. It's really about like, when you know the system well and you've hacked it and you've tested it and you've been out here and you've been putting in, 10 plus years of work, like to me, that is what kind of starts to allow you to really create, you know, like bigger impact because you've gotten the system down. And so we know our system, like we know it works, we know it's effective for early stage women entrepreneurs. And so that's the legacy work to me. Like if I can be, 10, 20 years from now, sitting down and be like, yeah, 100,000 women, like I was able to help transform the economics in our community. Like that's going to be enriching and powerful.
Hey, that I'm dropping you with those keys right there. That's amazing. That's wonderful. I know all the people that got to tune in today are truly blessed. People were putting in there, this is what they need to hear this morning, what is afternoon now. And I guess depending on what coast you on, we global, it's different time zones, but definitely tap into you. Where can people find you at lastly?
The best place is just to find me on Instagram, honestly. Okay. So I had dropped it in the chat. So it's somewhere up in there. But yeah, definitely find me on Instagram. Like I'm accessible. Like, I really believe in sharing information, for, like I said, the ladies, definitely find me in the app, go through that boot camp. Let's get to work and get that going. But even for the fellas, like, find me on Instagram. If I can point you in the direction and give you some additional resources, like I'm happy to do that. We're all out here together. Like we're all out here to, get funded and to be able to kind of, continue to scale our businesses and change our communities. And so I love the work that you all are doing at, Keys to Black Wealth. Thank you for having me, on the stage. And all y'all need to get the replay. Like how is this even a conversation? Like this is amazing work. Like this is, all the speakers that have been lined up, like that's essential. Like this is knowledge that's being dropped and that's being shared. And so definitely take advantage of that. And I can't wait to see what you all do with your platform and as you continue to grow.
Appreciate it. Much love. Much love.
Yes. Thank you so much, sis. Appreciate your time today.
Awesome. No problem.